2016 has been a very interesting year, not only for tax but for Nigeria as a whole. A lot of challenges in different areas, but specifically in terms of tax, there have been a few highlights. We've had the attempts by state governments, federal government to try and intensify efforts to collect more taxes. We've seen efforts around, just enforcement. We had a few companies in the press that were locked. We had attempts to try and prosecute a few people. We had issues with tax officers who were allegedly said to have committed tax fraud and paid or collected bribes. We saw an effort about tax amnesty, encouraging people to volunteer, tax remediation, pay their taxes. We see the Joint Tax Board trying to bring in some harmony into how tax authorities work together, especially in terms of how they exchange information and use intelligence. We saw significant activities in the international tax space, especially by the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. We saw Nigeria signed agreements along with many other countries on the mutual arrangement and exchange of information, such that if you have information about a particular taxpayer or company in South Africa, for example, you can exchange with Nigerian tax authorities automatically. We also see a bit of activities around ECOWAS, where initially Nigeria, along with the other countries, agreed that the common external tariff should be implemented with effect from April. I'm not sure that has really been fully implemented, but by and large, it's been a year that we had significant conversation and debates and ideas about tax. We really didn't make enough progress that as I would have loved to see in terms of both changing the tax culture, in terms of transparency as to how government use tax money, in terms of the attitude of people towards paying taxes, especially in terms of compliance rate, because I think people just had far too many reasons to justify to themselves why they shouldn't pay tax if they didn't have electricity and roads were bad and people were losing employment. Not enough reasons, but some reasons why people didn't comply. And the challenge with government revenue continues as a result of all of this. So it's been a very remarkable year, both for some positive reasons and not so positive ones. So there's still a fundamental issue with the Nigerian structure as a federation. So the fiscal federalism is not working as it should. So what that means is a lot of the issues to do with the tax system have to be driven from the center by the federal government in the driving seat. That's not to say that the states don't have a role to play, including in tax policy formulation and how they implement taxes, especially the existing tax laws. But if you put it all together, I'll commend the federal government for taking the initiative to review the national tax policy, which is now in its final stage and hopefully will be approved by the Federal Executive Council as well as the National Economic Council so that we can start to implement. In terms of how the states have really fared, not so well. We are all aware of so many of the states who have been unable to pay even salaries of their workers for months. It's because historically we have been very lazy. We go to Abuja, federation account, monthly allocation, we collect the money, fly back, and there's jamboree. Because oil price went down, the free money was no longer flowing as it used to be in the past, and then everybody started struggling. And that affected not only the public sector, but also the private sector because the economy is largely public sector driven, which is abnormal. And that's why it's not difficult to know why the economy is in recession as we speak. So some of the states trying to do amnesty on one hand is good, but I would say that it's something you need to think about very carefully. The purpose of an amnesty should be three main focus. One is you can waive the legal right that you have as a state to prosecute people. It's a criminal issue. People sometimes take it for granted that when you don't pay your taxes, And this is not that you made a mistake. You genuinely did not declare your income to pay your tax. It's a criminal offense. And in addition to collecting the money from you, they can put you in jail. So when you do an amnesty, you say, you can come and report yourself to me that you didn't pay tax before, pay the tax as we agree, and I will not prosecute you. Number two benefit is you can waive penalty and interest. So in addition to the fact that I'm not going to prosecute you, I'll waive your penalty and interest, you only just pay the principal tax. And the number three, where you probably will need the National Assembly to amend the law to make it happen, is where you actually waive the principal tax. And I can say to you, and this is sometimes very important, especially for small businesses and the informal sector, you say, I forgive you of all the taxes you haven't paid in the past, no prosecution, no penalty and interest, no principal tax, but just come and report yourself and register. So that once I know who you are, from next year, you start paying taxes. Because if you look at the numbers, the number of people who are paying taxes or even registered with tax authorities in Nigeria is less than 15 million nationwide. For companies, it's not significantly better. So you find almost 80 to 90% of Nigerians and companies are not compliant with taxes. So what that means is we need to think differently about tax going forward. And that has to start with policy. Once the policies have been agreed and they are in the best interest of the country, we must fix the legislation, including amending the constitution as to who has the power about taxes, what taxes can you collect to address multiplicity of taxes, and so on and so forth. Once we do that, we'll begin the journey of a tax reform to have a robust tax system that can fund development in Nigeria with or without oil revenue. If you look at the 2017 budget proposals, because they're still proposals, you see almost 1 trillion increase in the expected revenue from oil, and there is a slight decrease in the expected revenue from non-oil. Now, two things. If you look at 2016, have we met the budget that we set before? The answer is no. We didn't meet the budgeted revenue both for oil and non-oil. Now, because of the recent agreement by OPEC members and non-OPEC members to reduce production, the price of crude oil in the international market has gone up to close to 60. The question is that going to be sustained? The benchmark has increased from 38 that we used in 2016, we have used $42.5. So I'm a little bit worried because the international market for oil is so volatile and unpredictable. Somebody might just wake up tomorrow and say, we're not agreeing again, and then the price goes down. So we should stop putting all our hope on a source of revenue that we have no control over. Plus, if you look at the benchmark that we have used, it's not too bad, 42.5, but I have issues with the volume. We still have 2.2 million barrels per day. We did not achieve anything close to that in 2016. I know there are a lot of efforts being put in place now to try and ensure that there's peace in the Niger Delta region. But I think we have to be consciously optimistic. I would say maybe an estimate of 1.8 would have been more realistic. Overall, unless those assumptions we have made about volume, about price of crude oil are sustained and indeed happen in 2017, then that would be an unrealistic budget. Because the economy itself, I don't see a significant turnaround such that non-oil sector will be able to outperform the target and the budget to be able to make up for any potential shortfall in the oil revenue. A little bit ambitious, but possible if we do the right things. For companies and individuals who are taxpayers, a few things they have to do in 2017. Number one is you have to try and do a review, a self-review. You just take a step back and say, as a person, an individual, or as a business or a company, where are we with our taxes? And you need to review every area of your tax requirement and obligation. For an individual, it might be, am I paying my personal income tax? Am I registered? If I have a small business, am I registered for VAT? Have I been charging and paying? If I'm a company, you do all of that plus company income tax. If you are liable to petroleum profit tax, the same thing, capital gain tax. So when you do a review, it gives you a snapshot of this is where you are. And the second step is you need to do a remediation. Wherever you see gaps, you try and fix them. Because I can tell you that 2017 will not be business as usual. Because for government now, it's a question of survival. We've been downgraded by different sovereign rating agencies. So it's really tough. Government is trying to raise money. Even the bond that government was trying to sell a couple of days back, some of it were not even fully subscribed. So it's really tough. Inflation is almost 19%. So what that means is, if you look at the 2017 budget, debt funding is very significant. But even the cost of funding the debt itself is more than 1/3 of the revenue that government is making. So we don't have any headroom for either not meeting our revenue targets or having to borrow more at a very significant borrowing rate. So it means that everything has to work together. So individuals and companies must be prepared for tax regime and tax authorities that are a little bit more aggressive in terms of enforcement and less forgiving of when people do the wrong thing. So review your affairs, carry out remediation, and above all, you should plan your activities for 2017. It's easier when you deal with tax matters by looking at forecasts and planning ahead, rather than doing a post-mortem firefighting analysis. Because sometimes once the damage is done, there's really nothing you can do. Planning your affairs does not mean you are evading tax. It does not mean illegality. It means you're just being smart, and that's acceptable when you do it within boundaries. And I think that's the way to approach 2017.